We're on? We're live? Okay.
Hi.
Okay, so we're in the Maimer. Gal Einai. We're holding chapter 7 in the Maimer, page Reish Tzadik Vav in the copies. Chapter 7 in the Maimer Gal Einai. So, what we said was that Gal Einai, we asked God to open our eyes so that we can see the wonders of His Torah. So we said, why would we ask that He open our eyes? We should ask that He reveal them, like we say, like the pasuk says, God will show us niflois, He'll show us wonders. If it's a wonder, then it means it's something that's beyond our capacity to see. So if that's the case, we need to be shown that. Why are we asking to open our eyes so that we can see?
So we don't handle it.
Right, so we should be shown it. Why are we asking that our eyes should be opened?
So you can't handle it. That's where by
And if you opened your eyes, you could?
Yeah, but not in Torah.
No, so we explained that Gal Einai, the request is, since the whole purpose of creation is that the creation come to know and to see godliness in its own state, in its own condition. So therefore we ask not that it be shown to us, that it be something that's outside of our own experience, that we have access to, but that we ourselves, within our own human context and experience, we should be able to see these wonders, be able to see these things. That's the purpose of creation, of Dir B'Tachtonim. We gave the example of, brought from the Medrash about the decree of Elyonim, Lo Yerdu L'Tachtonim, and Tachtonim Lo Yalu L'Elyonim, that the decree that the king made that heaven doesn't come down to earth, earth doesn't go up to heaven. And we explained that the ultimate purpose is that the ascent of that which is below. And therefore we say, Gal Einai, Va'abita, we ask that He open our eyes so that we see, so that our eyes should be able to see these things in our own state. As creation, we should be elevated, we should rise, we should ascend to be able to perceive the godliness. And another point we made was that not only are we asking that our eyes see it, but also that it should be mitoira secha, in your Torah. And as Rebbe Marash notes in his Maimer, Torah Secha means in the revealed part of Torah. So we explain there's Nigla and there's Pnimius Torah, there's the outer, the revealed part of Torah, there's the inner dimension of Torah, as we've explained in past classes. And the idea of seeing the wonders of Torah, which the wonders represent the two levels of the inner dimension of Torah, the two dimensions of the inner aspect of Torah, the soul of Torah and the soul of the soul, the secrets and the secrets of the secrets. So we want to be able to see them in Torah Secha, in the revealed Torah. Since everything originates in Torah, since everything comes from Torah, like Torah is the blueprint through which God creates the world. So this idea that we should be able to see godliness in our own experience is something that can be found in Torah as well. So that not only is it that we have to ascend, we have to be able to come to God and come to Him in our own created state, but also in Torah it's the same thing, that we should be able to see the deepest secrets of Torah in the simple understanding of Torah. And this explains. I'm sorry?
Why are we down to ask for it?
Well, that's exactly the point. We add, it's okay. The point is like this. For God to give it to us, that's, again, defeats the purpose. The purpose that we should rise for it. So therefore, we have to ask for it. Us asking for it, it implies that we're ascending. It implies that we're becoming more sensitive. We're coming to it.
Why do we have to go through this?
That's the whole point. Well, we'll get to that later. At the end of the Maimer, we talk about Eda Galazah. No, but the point.
You don't want to say. You just sit here.
But again, based on what we've already said, it's understood. Which is that the point is that we have to come to it on our own. But why is it that the Hashem doesn't grant the being? So that will become clear in chapter 9 in the Maimer. Okay, a little bit more clear. Okay. So we said that this thing exists in Torah as well. Within Torah, we have Torah and mitzvahs. Torah represents God's descent, heaven coming down to earth. Mitzvahs represent going up to heaven, and that's why the Tzemach Tzedek in his Maimer, where he talks about the pasuk Al Einai, mentions kavanas mitzvahs, the intent within mitzvahs, because that underlines this idea that even within Torah there has to be the ascent. We have to come up, we have to rise, we have to be more sensitive, we have to come closer to God, not just that He comes closer to us, and that is primarily within the context of Jewish practice and the Jewish experience. That's primarily in the performance of mitzvahs, which represent the person refining himself, being more sensitive and rising. Okay. So now the Rebbe says like this, chapter 7. So he said that is specifically, I'm sorry, to get back to that point, that's specifically in Kavanas HaMitzvahs, in the intent of mitzvahs, which is why the Tzemach Tzedek, while talking about the neflois of Torah, that the wonders of Torah are the inner dimension of Torah, he also mentions the explanation of the Shalah, that it also represents the intent in mitzvahs, because that's where we see this idea of Tachtoinim Yalu, of the ascent of the lower spheres, the lower reality. Okay, Zayin. Olahisif de bekavanas hamitzvos negei inin zeh she'inyanim achinaylim yedu minyanim ele k'may she'em bepashtus yesim asher b'Torah. Not only, as we said, is it that we see the ascent of the lower realm, primarily in the performance of mitzvahs, rather than in the study of Torah, but here it's even more important than experiencing it through Torah study. Why? Because what's the whole point of the ascent of the lower realms? That we should know, that we should be able to see with our eyes, as it were, see the deepest things in Torah through nigla, through our own experience. Is kivan she'inyan hamitzvah l'tzar v'nes habriya is kenal sifhei lifel bir v'zikuch ba'adam ha'mekayim mitzvah. Since the whole point of the mitzvah is to refine the person, so this idea of seeing the godliness, seeing the wonders through our own experience, is primarily seen or primarily required in the performance of mitzvahs, and specifically in the intention that we have in the mitzvahs, seeing the kavana of the mitzvah. In other words, we mentioned there's the secrets of Torah, and then there's the external part of Torah. So we said we have to come to see the secrets of Torah. The mystical dimension of Torah has to be seen through the obvious, the simple external part of Torah. Okay. Then we said mitzvahs. There's the performance of the mitzvah, and then there's the intention of the mitzvah. The intention of the mitzvah is like the inner dimension of the mitzvah. And we're saying that we have to be able to see the inner dimension of the mitzvah. So it's more important, this emphasis on seeing the inner dimension through your own experience is more important to have that experience by the performance of mitzvahs than it is even by Torah. Why? Because as we said earlier, the whole point of the mitzvah, as contrasted by Torah, is the idea of the ascent of the refining of the person. The ikar abiru v'azikuch hu al yidei kavanas hamitzvahs. The primary refining of the person's character is through the intention of the mitzvah. The kol shakavana hinailis yaser, and the higher the intention, the concentration or the meaning behind the mitzvah is habir v'azikuch hinailis yaser. That the impact, the refining impact it has on the person is also more profound. So therefore, when we're saying, just as we said about Torah, that we're asking, we want to see the wonders in the revealed part of Torah. That's where we want to see the secrets. This idea is even more so when we talk about seeing the kavana of the mitzvah, the neflois of Torah, meaning the kavana of the mitzvah, the intention, the devotions, the purpose, the meaning in the mitzvah, seeing that in the actual simple understanding of the mitzvah as well. Why? Because it's in the mitzvah more so than in the study of Torah that we see this idea of the ascent of the human, of the creation of man to come closer to become higher, to come closer to heaven. So based on this, we can understand why the Tzemach Tzedek brings in his long discourse on davening, on prayer. He brings this expression, a quote from Shimshon. He brings a quote that Ani mispal da zatinik. The Tzemach Tzedek talks in Sheish Mitzvah. It's a long discourse, a whole long, not just an essay. It's more like a thesis on davening, on prayer, and prayer, according to Kabbalah and Chassidism and mysticism, the inner dimension of prayer. And in it, he brings this statement that when a person davens, he also has to daven l'dazatinik. He has to daven, meaning it there in the context in which he brings it is we're talking about all these higher levels and these ideas, these intentions and the devotions of Kabbalah in prayer. So a person might be mistaken and think that he's praying, God forbid, to those things, to those levels, to those aspects of godliness, and not to God himself. So you have to remember that ani mispal d'azatinik, just like a child comes to pray, you ask a child, who are you praying to? He's praying to God. Plain and simple. So a person, even not to get too carried away and caught up in their devotions and the concentration and the intentions that they have, to remember that they're also praying l'dazatinik, praying simply to God, plain and simple. Right. So, but if you get carried away in the devotions and the intentions, the kavanas of the Arizal and davening, and the different meanings behind the different verses in prayer, and even the different meanings and dimension of the concept of prayer as it is as a concept in Jewish mysticism, you can sometimes get carried away with that and forget the simple component of it, which is that you're praying to God. Just as a simple child prays to God. So seemingly it seems that that's what the Tzemach Tzedek is trying to say. That we're talking about all these different levels, higher levels and devotions of prayer. So you can't forget that there's also the simple level of prayer. There's simple aspect of prayer, which is simply like a child. You go, you open up a prayer book, you come into a shul, you daven, you're praying to God. So the Rebbe says like this. No, the Tzemach Tzedek in this long treatment of davening in Sheish Mitzvahs Tefillah, he's trying to explain the concept of davening, of prayer in general, as well as many different aspects in the davening, components of the davening, according to Kabbalah, and even more so according to Chassidism. So why does he have to bring in this idea of praying like a child? I mean, that's the whole point of opening a Sheish Mitzvahs Tefillah is to pray like a mystic, to pray like a chassid. Why are we mentioning this idea that you pray also l'dazatinik? That's elementary perspective on davening. So why is he included here? So the Rebbe says like this: Shleimar. You could say this is to underline, to emphasize that the highest forms of prayer, the prayer that involves all kinds of contemplation and meditation and reflection on mystical concepts and ideas, and how each part of prayer relates and corresponds to a different aspect of the divine Godhead, etc., etc. All of those things we have to remember. We have to be able to see those, experience them through this most simple way of looking at prayer. The simplest, most elementary perspective on prayer, which is praying like the child. This is true. This is true with regards to the general concept of tefillah, of prayer. That the idea of when we reflect on the concept of prayer and what's achieved through prayer and the purpose of prayer, we should not lose sight, or we should be able to find those deepest concepts in prayer, find them in the simplest way, which is praying to God, coming to God to ask Him for what you need. And this is also true with regard to the details in prayer, the different components of the davening structure, the different prayers, the different requests, which all represent spiritual concepts as well. That all these things need to be in line with, as well as understood through the simple meaning of that. When you're asking God for things, you're asking for your basic needs. Whatever it is that you're lacking, you're asking Hashem for that. So even though you could say that your needs that you're asking for represent this spiritual level and that spiritual level and this meditation and that devotion, etc., etc., ultimately, not only can you not lose sight of the fact that you're also just praying to God for your basic needs, for everything. God provides us with everything, but also that the deepest understandings, these deepest devotions and meditations need to be seen and understood through the perspective of that simplest perspective on davening. So again, what the point is here, that since we're explaining that the idea is not only that we want to see the deepest dimensions of Torah, but that we also want to see those things through the simplest understanding. Meaning, Just as we're saying that it's not just about heaven coming down to earth, but it's about earth rising to heaven, we want, in other words, the pasuk Gal Einai v'abit neflois b'teresecha is teaching us two things. Number one, we're saying Gal Einai, open my eyes, that I should be able to see it. Not that you should reveal it to me from above, that it should be imposed on me, but I should be able to be sensitive to it. It should come from my own experience. That's number one. And number two is that these wonders should be seen b'teresecha. I should be able to see them from within my condition. Not only should I be sensitive to be able to see them, but I should be able to see them from the basic understanding, from my basic experience. And this is a deeper understanding in what the Tzemach Tzedek brings, Ani Mispal Das Atinik, which simply learning what he says over there is that there's the deeper understanding of davening, there's the deeper dimension, and there's also the basic dimension. So here the Rebbe explains, no, the point that he's making there is that the deepest dimensions need to be found through the most basic, through the simplest. It brings out the same point. Now, why is the Rebbe bringing this here? Why is it necessary for him to mention this point of the Tzemach Tzedek in this Maimer? And specifically, the Rebbe will answer it by asking a different question, which is, why is that this idea is an idea that the Tzemach Tzedek teaches us specifically about when he's talking about prayer? It's a general concept that could be applied anywhere. Why does he teach it to us there? So he says, since the whole point of prayer is the ascent, the rising from below to above, which is adam, the refining of man. So therefore this idea is expressed where? When we're talking about prayer, since prayer symbolizes this idea of the ascent, the refining of the human being, and his ascent, climbing and connecting with Hashem. So therefore he teaches it to us there, because that's where it has to be most pronounced. Similar to what we're saying here in our Maimer, that where is it that we see this idea in play, that the ascent of man to heaven is more so than just in study of Torah, but even the performance of mitzvahs. So it's just, and that's why the Tzemach Tzedek, because within that itself, within this context, prayer represents the ascent, rising above. So therefore, when he talks about prayer, which prayer also represents this ascent, this rising up, he brings this idea of Ani Mispal Das Atinik, that over there it's more pronounced and needs to be seen even more. Make sense? Any questions? We good? Okay. So if you recall in the beginning of the Maimer, we said that. So we've kind of closed the explanation now, for the most part, on the pasuk Gal Einai. This Maimer is based on the verse Gal Einai v'abit neflois b'teresecha. Open my eyes so I can see the wonders of your Torah. We said, why does it say Gal Einai, open my eyes, and not reveal it to me, not show me the wonders? So we explained that. We also explained why that Neflois represents the two aspects, the two dimensions, which will come back in play soon, both the soul of Torah and the soul of the soul. That's why it's Neflois wonders in plural. We also explained what it means that it's Mitayra Secha, from within your Torah, and all this is an obvious connection between this verse and Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's day. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was the great revealer and teacher of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalah. And so we see that what was his idea, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's idea, was not just revealing the secrets, but the idea that these secrets need to be perceived from our own experience as well. So we see a connection between Lag BaOmer and Gal Einai. But if you recall, we mentioned that there's another verse that connects with Lag BaOmer, and that's the verse Eid Hagal Hazeh. In the episode of Yaakov running away from Lavan, Jacob running away from his father-in-law Laban, which is discussed in the book of Genesis, where there Yaakov runs away from his father-in-law. Lavan chases after him, he pursues him, and eventually they meet up. They have a little confrontation, and Yaakov builds a little mound. He puts together a pile of stones, a gal, a little mound of stones, and they make a deal between them that they're not going to cross. They're not going to cross into each other's sides. That's a little treaty that they make between themselves. And they do it with a gal. Gal meaning a mound. So he said that verse also is connected. So seemingly, what's the connection with Lag BaOmer? Lag, Lamed Gimel, 33rd day of the Omer, 33 is Lamed Gimel. Lamed Gimel, backwards, is Gal. So you have a connection. There's Gal and Lag, it's the same thing, right? So there's a connection. And seemingly it's an allusion to it. It doesn't go much deeper than that. So we already explained how actually the verse Gal Einai is deeply connected to the theme of Lag BaOmer. It's not just that it's an allusion to it, but even the word Gal, to uncover, even that itself reflects the idea of Lag BaOmer. That word itself, the concept of uncover, that represents the purpose of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's teaching, that we uncover our eyes, that our eyes are now open to be able to see. But what's the connection with Gal, with Eid HaGal Hazeh? Gal, also same word, Gal, the same two letters, Gimel and Lamed, but seemingly it has no connection. Gal, to reveal, we see the connection, and we just explained that verse at length, the first 7 chapters. But Eid HaGal Hazeh, the mound, Gal meaning a mound, a pile of stones, what connection does that have with Lag BaOmer? So we still have to explain that. And then also, what's the connection between these two verses? What's the connection between Gal Einai and Eid HaGal Hazeh? Between these two things, which seemingly are two separate topics entirely. Okay. Chapter 8. Now we can understand, based on our explanation and our treatment of the verse Gal Einai, which also explained to us the deeper meaning of Lag BaOmer, the deeper purpose of Lag BaOmer. We can understand the connection between these two verses which allude to Lag BaOmer. The verse Gal Einai v'abit neflois m'teiresecha, our verse here, and ve'eid HaGal Hazeh, and the verse this mound, this pile of stones, it bears witness. This mound that Yaakov made to separate between him and his father-in-law Lavan is similar to the wall, the barrier that was up between heaven and earth prior to the giving of the Torah. We said that before giving the Torah, we brought the example from the analogy from the Medrash about the Bnei Roim and the Bnei Surya, that the two countries, one couldn't go down and the other couldn't go up. And we said same thing as with heaven and earth. Prior to the giving of the Torah, there was a wall between them. Lag BaOmer, which is the giving of the Torah, of the inner dimension of Torah, was also just as by Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, which we celebrate on Shavuos. We celebrate the tearing down of the wall between heaven and earth. It's the same idea as with Lag BaOmer, which is the giving of the inner dimension of Torah. We're also tearing down a barrier between heaven and earth. In what sense? So just as you have the wall that was up prior to the giving of Torah, you also have the wall that exists, that separates between Yaakov and Lavan, which represents that wall. Mavur b'siddur shar Lag BaOmer. So in the Siddur explains in this portal on Lag BaOmer, where he talks about the Ba'agal shebein Lavan and Yaakov shnei inyanim. There in the Siddur, remember we quoted from the Siddur, where the Rebbe Marash says that Gal Einai, the verse of our Maimer, is connected with Lag BaOmer. But he bases it on on the connection with Lag BaOmer with Eid HaGal Hazeh, which is in the Maimer in the Siddur from the Alter Rebbe. So in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe talks about the idea of the Gal, this mound between Lavan and Yaakov. You have two things. You have Hagal shebein Lavan ha'elyon shelamayla miYaakov liYaakov. You have you have like this. We have Kabbalah talks about Yaakov, and mystically Yaakov corresponds to the world of Atzilus, and then you have Lavan, his father-in-law. Lavan, we know, was a swindler. He was a bad dude. But Lavan, in Kabbalah, is described also as the Levan Elyon, a very high spiritual level. It's in fact, the two are related. They're not a contradiction. It's because Lavan originates in such a high spiritual level that from that high spiritual level you can have this descent and end up with a very low level of Lavan, to the point that you end up with a Lavan Arami, a Lavan a swindler. So in Kabbalah, when you talk about the levels in dimensions in Kabbalah, so Lavan represents the level that's beyond Atzilus, beyond the world of Atzilus. Yaakov represents the world of Atzilus, the highest of the 4 spiritual worlds. And then you have Lavan, as he's down here, which is Lavan representing the lower realms, the world's Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, till the lowest level of Lavan, which is Lavan the swindler down here in this world, the bad man. So when we talk about the wall between Lavan and Yaakov, this gal, this mound of stones, but separating between Lavan and Yaakov, we're talking about a separation between two things. We're talking about the separation between Atzilus and higher than Atzilus, and Atzilus and below Atzilus. Hagal shebein Lavan ha'elyon shelamayla miYaakov liYaakov, that higher level, which is v'hu ha'parsa shebein olam ein sof shelamayla miAtzilus v'Atzilus, which in Chassidic terminology that represents the parsa, the curtain that separates between the worlds beyond the realms beyond Atzilus and the world of Atzilus. And then also Vagal sheben Yaakov Lavan atachta, in the mound between Yaakov and the lower Lavan, which is the parsa sheben Atzilus l'biyah, the curtain between Atzilus and the lower worlds. Varem is the Lag BaOmer b'pasuk zehu. So what's the allusion to Lag BaOmer in this verse of Eid HaGal Hazeh? Is that Shaidei Rashbin is bar Hagal v'Mechitza through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, through his teaching of the inner dimension of Torah, this brings down the mechitza, the wall, the barrier, mechitza shebein Lavan Elyon Liyakev, both the barrier between higher Lavan, meaning the levels beyond Atzilus and Atzilus, the gamma mechitza shebein Yaakov Lavan Atach, and also the barrier between Atzilus and the lower realms. What does this mean? So we're not going to get into, I don't want to get carried away and discuss these ideas of Atzilus and Biyah and the Parsa. That's not the topic of this Maimer, so let's not lose focus and go off there. But just suffice for what's necessary for us to know in the connection between the Pasuk Gal Eid Hagalas and Lag Baimer is very simple. Yaakov represents the world of Atzilus, which is the highest of the four worlds. That's a world of total oneness with God. Then beyond that, though, but Atzilus, as high as it is, as one as united as it is with God, is still defined as a world, the world of Atzilus. So there's a dimension of godliness that's beyond that, that's totally above and beyond that, which is a whole, essentially different type of spirituality, of godliness. Therefore, there's a separation between the two. Between what comes before Atzilus and Atzilus, there's a wall, or the curtain, a parsa, that separates between the two, because they're fundamentally different. Atzilus and the lower three worlds also are fundamentally different. Where in Atzilus there's only oneness. The lower worlds starts to be otherness. There starts to be creation. So Atzilus is now the difference between the three worlds is just a matter of degree. To what degree is otherness experienced and felt? But the difference between those three and Atzilus is fundamentally different. So therefore there's a curtain between those worlds as well, between Atzilus and Biyah, Atzilus and the lower worlds. So when we say there's Eid Hagal Hazeh, there's a Gal that separates between Yaakov and Lavan. Yaakov represents Atzilus, as discussed in Kabbalah, and Lavan represents the two polar extremes of Lavan. There's the higher Lavan, the Lavan that's beyond Atzilus, and there's the lower Lavan, Lavan that's below Atzilus. And Lag BaOmer is about taking down that barrier. Just as Matan Torah is taking down the barrier between heaven and earth, Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's purpose, his function, what did he do? He took down the barrier between higher than Atzilus and Atzilus and lower than Atzilus. What happens then? What happens then, if you take down both barriers, then what happens is, what do you have in this world? Not only do you have in the lower three realms, down to our world, do you have a revelation of Atzilus, but you also have beyond Atzilus, because now there's no barrier. So if the level beyond Atzilus is flowing into Atzilus, and Atzilus is flowing in, and they're all flowing in unobstructed, so not only do you get Atzilus in Biyah, but you even get beyond Atzilus in Biyah. Does that make sense? When we take them both, so let's talk about that after. It's a very high spiritual realm,
why
a world.
Why was the separation there, and why now?
Again, so we explain why the separation there, because they're fundamentally different stages within creation.
You could just take it down?
So you have to take it down. The point is to take them down. The point is to reveal the highest and the lowest. So we see that Yaakov making this gal, this mound, this idea of the breaking of this wall represents the idea of higher than Atzilus. And that's the idea that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai didn't only reveal the secrets of the Torah, but remember we said that on Lag BaOmer he also revealed Nishmasa L'Nishmasa, the deeper, the inner secrets, the Razin Dirazin, meaning not only the secrets which represent Atzilus being revealed in this world, but also the secrets of the secrets, meaning beyond Atzilus in this world as well. Yeah? So meaning that in Biyah, to the extent that even in our lower world, we should have a revelation not only of Atzilus in this world, but also of what's beyond Atzilus, which can only happen by breaking down both barriers, taking down both curtains. This is also the meaning of the other verse of Lag BaOmer, the verse of our Maimer. What did we say? That in our verse we're saying that we're trying to reveal the nifla'os, plural, the neshama and the neshama l'neshama, both inner dimensions of Torah. Both of them should be revealed in this world, to the point that we should see them in Torah. In Torah, meaning both of the lower levels. Remember, we said there are four aspects in Torah. There's the garment, there's the body, there's the soul, and the soul of the soul. So in the Pasuk Einai, we're asking to reveal the soul and the soul of the soul. Both of those inner dimensions should be revealed, but not only in Nigla the Torah, in the body of Torah, but even in the levush, even in the garment, even in Asiyah. Well, we have, what time is it? 9:05. We have some time? We don't have time to get into the second, before you stop it. Okay, so we'll finish off this end on Thursday. Mitzvah Hashem, we'll finish what the idea of Asiya, meaning the relationship between the world of Asiya and the stories in Torah, the garment. Let's leave that for now. Let's just first finish the general point here, which is as follows: that we can understand the connection. If both the verse 8, remember, beginning we come to the Maimer, they seem to just be an allusion to Lag Baimer, just because the word Gal. It doesn't seem to go beyond that. Even if we want to go beyond that, the two verses, Eid Hagal Hazeh and Gal Einai, seem to have no connection. So here the Rebbe is saying, no, they both do connect to Lag Baimer, and they both connect with each other. The purpose of Rashbi, the function of Rashbi, which is highlighted and expressed on the day of his passing in Lag Baimer, what's the whole point of Lag Baimer? Is to reveal the deepest dimensions of Torah in the physical world, and to be able to come to the deepest level of godliness through our own human experience. That's his function, that's this purpose. This idea is expressed both in the verse Gal Einai V'Abit Neflois M'Torah, where we say that our own eyes should see the Neflois, and you should see it in Torah Sacha. We should be able to come to the secrets and the secrets of the secrets, the soul and the soul of the soul, in both aspects of the outer dimension of Torah. That's Gal Einai, and that relates to Lag Baimer. And even Eid Hagal Hazeh is about breaking the barrier between Lavan and Yaakov, which spiritually, mystically means the higher Lavan, the level of godliness beyond Atzilus, and the separation between Atzilus and Biyah, so that what happens, what's the result? That in Biyah, in the lower realms, even in our physical, material world, we should have access to what? To the godliness of Atzilus, as well as the godliness that's beyond Atzilus. Both of those dimensions, the soul and the soul of the soul. All that should be revealed. All that is connected with Lag Ba'omer.